who saw it fit to return me to this August Hall to continue making the contributions on their behalves. Also to the People's National Movement for selecting me as their candidate for Port of Spain North St. Anne's West. Madam Speaker, I have to start by saying that I had hoped that this term in Parliament would be somewhat different, and that we would all come here with renewed responsibility and renewed thought patterns, that we would just continue to, that we would do what was best for Trinidad and Tobago. I start by saying that in my respectful view, I don't think that the issue of COVID and how we deal with COVID as a country should be politicized in the manner that I've heard it here today. I'd like to say that with respect to COVID, if it hasn't been learned as yet by those on the other side, thank you very much. I'd like to say that if it hasn't been learned by some in this chamber as yet, COVID does not care about your race, about what creed, your religion, how much money you do or you don't have, where you've come from, what sex you are, your age, or anything like that. That point seems to be missed. The point is, and another point that I'd like to make, Madam Speaker, is this issue of COVID, this pandemic, this virus, is only 8 months old. So I've sat here and I've heard persons say that this was said in February, and masks were advised that you shouldn't use masks in February, and now here we are trying to make it mandatory that you wear masks. The world experts that we were all following at the onset of this pandemic globally, the WHO, I recall very, very clearly, early in the life of this virus, the WHO and other persons, other international experts were saying they didn't think the use of masks was going to help prevent the spread of this virus. However, this government, this responsible government, from day one, took the advice of our local health experts, and I'd like to use the opportunity to thank them again for their tireless effort. The Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Hines, Dr. Michelle Trotman, the Minister of Health, and his whole team, whenever we sat and we met on a weekly basis, we listened carefully to their advice. And to their credit, the Trinidad and Tobago public servant experts, the health experts, said very early o'clock to the Minister of Health, the Prime Minister and myself, the use of masks would help in the fight against COVID. And that was taking place in March when we came out and we took the decisions that we did and we implemented the stay-at-home orders. And the recommendation, I've heard the member from Mayaro talk about persuasion. We went through the stage of persuasion. We are not here today looking to introduce a fixed penalty system because we haven't tried the persuasive attempts, the attempts to persuade the population to do what is right. And I sat here and I listened to some of the contributions. And I thought of irony and a little bit of hypocrisy, because the health experts were telling us from day one, wear your mask. We in this house were mandated to wear masks at all times, very early o'clock, to spread out, have the social distance. We have gone the route of persuasion. We have tried the persuasion. We kept saying that we will continue. We kept asking the health experts, go out there and tell the population the importance of wearing masks, how that can save lives, how it may stop the spread of the virus. And the hypocrisy that I refer to and the irony is some of the types of behavior that we, the population, witnessed not too long ago, before August 10th. Certain persons who aspire for leadership in this country never being photographed with a mask on in massive crowds and gatherings, and to have the audacity to come here today and to attack an attempt by a responsible government. And I want to put on record, put it on the Hansard, that we are here today pursuing the mandatory wearing of masks, and I'll get to the fixed penalty system in a short while, because the health experts have asked us for it. The health experts have asked the Minister of Health, the Prime Minister, Minister of National Security, and the Attorney General, please make it mandatory for persons to wear masks. You should wear a muzzle, not a mask. Right? So that is why we're here today. We are not here today because we woke up in the morning.
Poor, please, because stop the members.
I am talking, I'm on my legs.
Okay, so can we resume?
You know, it is somewhat offensive to stand there making a contribution and to have a member on the other side pulling down the mask. The same thing we're talking about, the benefit of wearing a mask, the medical science saying wearing a mask. Here it goes. What? I take objection to your presence.
Okay. All right. So, member for Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, just withdraw that last statement, please. Thank you. Member for Naparima, I don't see any merit in your objection on Standing Order 48-4. Please continue.
Thank you very much. You know, so Madam Speaker, the health experts are the ones who have tried the persuasion. The health experts are the ones who have led the charge asking the population to mask up. And we have reached this stage because it is the final pillar. We have only come here today to introduce this system because there's a recognition that despite the health experts, the public servants, asking persons to wear masks whilst in public, not only to protect themselves, but potentially to protect other persons who may be around them. There was a certain laxity. There were persons not adhering to it. So the Attorney General has drafted and brought the legislation to give the power to be able to have fixed penalty notices, because we discussed it as responsible people do. And we spoke about if we go by a normal charge, what you could do is clog up the court system. What you could do is clog up the police stations. The last thing I want as the Minister of National Security is these persons who are breaching the regulations to be sent to prison. Because protecting the prison itself is an issue. So we came up with the fixed penalty system. I heard the member for Barataria Sawan asking about this system and talking about an appeal to the magistrate, and despite him looking at the legislation, he could find nowhere where this type of legislation is implemented. It was debated not too long ago. It was debated this year when we made the changes to the Motor Vehicle Act and put in place a fixed penalty system for offenses under the Motor Vehicle Act. It is also there for the dangerous drugs offenses, the same types of provisions. Right? So to come here on a maiden contribution and attempt to mislead the public and the population, I assume it was because he was not aware, he could not recall what had happened in the motor vehicle.
Madam Speaker, 48.6, I did not impute any proper motives, I did not mislead the population.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, if you could just rephrase that, and please proceed.
To suggest to the population through this House that the legislation that is currently being debated exists nowhere in the law books of Trinidad and Tobago is certainly false, and not so because it's there in the legislation. So going back to the position in February, we took the precaution through our public health experts and the Minister of Health early in March to try and persuade the population you needed to wear masks. We're here today to introduce a system that is a fixed penalty system because it is the best way to enforce what the public health experts are asking us to enforce, which is the mandatory wearing of masks. So what it is envisaged is that the police, when they see persons who are not wearing masks, will issue them with a fixed penalty notice, a ticket, and they will pay that ticket. We have had discussion as to the amount of the fine, and I'll leave the Attorney General to touch on that. I believe he already has. There's $1,000 in the first instance, $2,000, and then $3,000 thereafter. This government did not want to have to go this route, and it's important that we put that on the Hansard. We are forced to go this route to help persons on the advice of our medical experts to protect the population against the spread. We've been seeing the spread, the trajectory going upwards. I'm somewhat happy but cautious that over the last couple of days, the numbers seem to have reached a certain, I wouldn't say downward, but a flattened phase. And what we want, and you hear the chuckling from the member for Siparia, that is the type of, that is how they want to deal with the population, whereas we here are concerned, it's a laughing matter. So, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to add and to contribute to remind the population this virus is 8 months old. It's a learning curve. I heard all of the reference to the United Kingdom. I smiled. All of the reference to the United Kingdom, what is going on in the United Kingdom. Lest the population forget, the United Kingdom took off and was one of the worst places in how they handle COVID in the whole of Europe. Fortunately, we did not take the advice of those outside. Fortunately, here, we didn't listen to sunshine kills COVID. We did what needed to be happening. What was that? Sunshine and lime kills COVID. It does kill it. We will continue to be responsible. We'll continue to listen to our health experts. This legislation is necessary legislation, and we will apply it responsibly. This is a plea to the population that when we make the mask wearing mandatory, understand that we do not want the police service to be in a position where they're issuing tickets to everyone. But it has reached that stage of seriousness that if people are not listening and they're not taking the persuasive advice of our medical experts, this is the step that we need to take. So I commend it. I say it is necessary at this stage, and we will continue to implement in the responsible manner that we have all of the regulations. Because you see, let the population not forget that those on the other side and those associated with those on the other side have now sued the state over 20 times, challenging these regulations and lost on every count. So let the population understand that whilst the government is doing all that it can to keep them safe, there are those on the other side who are continuously challenging it and losing. And I hope that the Attorney General pursues wasted cost orders against those attorneys on the other side. Madam Speaker, with those few words, I commend the legislation and I thank you.
Member for Chaguanas West.